Welcome back to the Lakeside Productions YouTube channel. In this series, I'm repairing a 1940 40-foot Seaplane tender and converting it back into a liveaboard, which it was converted to after World War II. The boat is constructed of double diagonal mahogany hull planking and oak ribs. I started back by installing the diesel fuel filter for the diesel heater, the Autotherm 4D. It came with the rubber tube, the fuel filter and two Jubilee clips. I mounted this between the fuel tank and the fuel pump. I cut the rubber tube in half, allowing me then to secure it to each end of the fuel filter. It then took 3 attempts for the Autotherm diesel heater to prime itself, and then once fuel was flowing, once diesel was flowing through the fuel pipes, it then ran as normal. I painted the 3/4 inch plywood deck supports, which we repaired in the last episode, or we secured in the last episode, to the frame which we replaced. You can check that out as well. There's a link here on screen. I also removed another deck support made up from the 3/4 inch plywood, and these are just to add extra strength and structural integrity to the actual deck itself to stop any flexing or movement, because these will be fiberglassed over, so I want as minimum movement as possible. So this one I had actually secured some time ago, and I'm surprised it's in good nick, because the last one I removed, I believe, was rotten. That was secured to the frame that initially rotted out. So yeah, this will be repurposed and reused somewhere. I then removed these kind of wooden sections that were secured directly into the inner gunnel, and I guess these were done by a carpenter who had made up the actual shelving unit that was here in the space. They came out flush with the recess for the deck. They basically were fitted underneath the deck, flush with that wooden pine plank you can see above. And yeah, I guess from deck leaks over the years, the deck leaks weren't actually assessed or sealed, and anything that was built underneath those just rotted out in no time. So that was one of the first things that I actually pulled out when I started work on this boat. So in order to remove the original frame, which is rotten, and then also the triangular deck support that is secured to the frame itself, I used a combination of chiseling. I didn't want to use too much chiseling because you don't want to put too much harsh movement or vibrations into the boat. And I also used the multi-tool, the power tool with the cutting blade on it, which is needs to be replaced. It's eaten away quite a bit because I've hit a few screws. But it still does its job for now, and then also the angle grinder. And as you'll see, I ran into some complications with that. So even though the wood was totally rotten, it was still quite a challenge. The frame was quite stubborn. And again, I suppose that's due to all the brass screws that are through the hull. And that's really going to add extra support. And as you see, when we replace it, we don't shy with our brass screws from the exterior also. So as you see, this is how I burnt out the angle grinder. So it wasn't just the smoke from the burning wood, it was also the smoke from the burning brushes within the angle grinder. So I guess I learned the hard way that an angle grinder shouldn't be used on wood, essentially. But yeah, I mean, it's tricky because you got to get that out. I'm using a disc that really should be used on metal, but you know, I'm using it for the brass screws and all. My friend Peter recommended using a diamond cutting disc, and I think that will be the one that I'll give it a shot with and see. I managed to still use the kind of electric multi-tool to cut out the remaining wood around those screws, and those screws and copper nails are below the waterline, so I have to be kind of careful here. I was thinking about leaving those screws at their full length and then, you know, drilling, marking where the screws would be, and then drilling into the actual frame that's going to go in place, kind of secure them with taking the epoxy as well, so that you still have the full length screws and you're not messing with them. But we ended up cutting them as you'll see later, and I think it was for the best because it was just too tricky to get that to work. And you know, I was test fitting it in place and it was kind of moving the screw a little bit, so I didn't want to mess with that at all, especially because it's below the waterline. And you know, at least the security is there that, you know, even if we cut the screws, they're still stuck secured in place with the fiberglass as well on the far side, so there's nothing to really worry about there. This beam that I'm drilling into on the interior is actually what's securing the outer kind of rubbing strake that runs then down below the waterline towards the stern on the exterior, and it's bolted through into this beam that you see on the inside. So I just wanted to add extra strength to this. So I drilled a lot of pilot holes and then I tinned epoxy and applied epoxy to it until it soaked up as much epoxy as possible. I kept kind of dripping it into those holes and filling them up until it couldn't take any more. So that was the best approach I could do to kind of strengthen it up as you know, there's nothing else that can be really done in this situation, so we got to do the best we can. I would really love to be able to source git rot in this country, but it seems like it's impossible to find anything like git rot in Ireland. I mean, there's places that are selling it through eBay, but they're not even in this country. And the ones, I think I found one source that is, but it's just extortionate price. It's just crazy. I also used to use like this kind of wood hardener in the past that was a polyurethane based wood hardener. And, you know, I believe it sets off with the presence of moisture or something like this. It just didn't harden as I would like it to have done. So if anybody has any recommendations, maybe in Europe, where you can get a kind of a similar item to git rot that hardens wood, to use it in applications in areas where you really have no other option, and this is what you have to resort to, I would love to hear. If you have anything, please do drop them in the comments below. This area of mahogany planking on the interior had to be cut back to sound wood, so it was quite rotten here, and I didn't take any chances, so I really cut it back. And it was actually quite a challenge to cut it back and to chisel it in certain places as I got back to good wood. So I didn't want to risk leaving any old wood or rotten wood in place, so that's why I kind of cut it back to quite a big area. And as you can see, you know, there's a substantial amount of dry rot or rotten timber here, and you can actually see the mycelium, which is just crazy, the fungus growth on the calico, or the old material that's between the two double diagonal mahogany planks. Yeah, so that's it was pretty wild, and it was nice to get that removed. So now that we have this wood cut out, you can see the actual double diagonal mahogany. You can see the outer plank and the inner face of that plank. You can see it, and the seams, it's all dry, it's nice and dry. So it's just great to have that confidence to see that the sealant, the Sikaflex sealant that I'd used, is doing its job here. So in order to remove the mahogany planking, I actually use 6mm marine grade plywood here in place of it. And in order to get this right size and dimensions, I cut it down an old cereal box, and that gave me the perfect size that I could then transfer to the 6mm plywood. So firstly, I made sure to wet out the mahogany planking with neat epoxy first, and then I applied thickened epoxy to the actual plywood repair. So I also secured it in place just using some supports that I wedged in place, but I also used stainless steel screws just temporarily, and I filled those holes up with epoxy from the inside and the outside once I had removed them. So the oak ribs were also rotten and needed to be replaced here. So I just had enough oak left from the last job. So what I did was I cut it to size and we got those in place. So my father and I moved the boat over to the far side of the jetty, and this allowed us just to get better access to the hull of the boat on the port side so that we could actually secure the new frame in and then the oak ribs as well.
Enough stern rope to reach the jet. We figured it.
I might have to untie it and use this other bow rope to tie her on. How are you for that then?
Guns.
Yeah, we need to come like probably another 6 foot for it to get workable.
I'll tell you that.
So my order came in from Glass Fibre and Resin Supplies here in Ireland. They're based in Cork, and it's a very cool family-owned company. So it's great to be able to support them. And yeah, I just like to thank them because a lot of the supplies and materials that I've got worked with on the boat has come from those guys, you know, and that's what we did with the fiberglass roof with the epoxy. Everything was sourced from them in the past or last summer. So I just wanted to give those guys a shout out. And if you need supplies for fiberglass in your boat, whatever it may be, check out Glass Fibre Resin Supplies. So once I offered up my oak ribs and had them ready and in position, I marked each side of them, and that gave me a line that I could pre-drill. So I could use pilot holes from the interior and pre-drill to the outside of the hull. So that way when I held them back up in position, my father could pre-drill from the exterior. And I realised I could have done this all at the same time. But yeah, anyway, my father was away and then he came back, so I had done that previously. So once they were all pre-drilled, my father also drilled for countersinks, for the screw heads, for the brass screw heads. We found the right screws that would work, and then what we did is I just used thickened epoxy. So I used again West Systems epoxy, and I used the microfibers to thicken it up, and that is just to give it that extra strength. And is there another one below that?
Right, I'm counting the second one.
Perfect, yeah.
Second one.
Next one, yeah. Good job, yeah, next. And I'm in position. My father then used the heat gun just to help set off the epoxy as it was late at night, and you know we didn't want any moisture kind of getting back against the epoxy, so or the wood getting wet, because I think it was drizzling at that time. There was a bit of rain, so we just had to make sure that the heat gun helped kick off the epoxy and keep the area kind of dry. So I transferred the slope of the bilge using a cardboard template again, and I could then just take that to the teak frame, mark it and cut it, and it worked perfectly. So for the new replacement frame, I'm actually using a teak door frame, and it's just great to actually get this reused, because otherwise who knows where it would end up. It might be burnt. So it's just fantastic to recycle timber like this. So here's my father cutting the screws and that slope or below the waterline in order for us to get the frame in place. For once I can say it wasn't me who dropped something overboard. You got it? Yeah. So once we had the frame dry fitted, again I offered it up, marked each side of it, drilled pilot holes, so on the exterior again, my father could then pre-drill into the frame and through the side of the hull with the right thickness or right size drill bit for the screws, and then countersinks as well. Oh yeah. Almost. Okay, that's me lined up.
You happy?
Almost, hang on. I am... I'm happy.
You straight, you're happy?
Yeah, nothing's moved yet.
Get really torquey now in a minute. You can mount the engine to that frame fin. Whew.
I followed up the countersinks or the recess on the exterior of the hull. I used thickened epoxy again just to fair those screw holes, and I will follow them up again. I will sand them lightly, and then I'll apply an even finer fairing compound mixed in with epoxy, and that'll give me a nice fair surface that I can then sand lightly, and we can follow up when we're painting the exterior. Repair support piece that also attaches to the frame. This runs down along the bilge. Like I said, this area that's below the waterline. So the best I could do here was, I cut out the rot on that plank, and the plank could be cut out from it for sure, but it's something I just don't want to jeopardize the structural integrity of the boat right now, especially it's such a sensitive area. It's below the waterline. So I used some oak, again recycled oak, and I cut it to size. I made sure it had the gradient or the slope for the actual where the old support was. It matched that perfectly. Secured it. I screwed it to the actual frame that I had replaced, and then I also screwed it into the exterior one. So it's kind of a half sister, I suppose, replacement as well as a new piece. So I think that should be good and strong. I am going to also bolt it in, just put one bolt through as well, just to make sure that because those screws, I'm not 100% sure that they're as strong as they can be into that wood, seeing as the old condition of the wood was not so strong. Anyway, So a long story short is it has the strength to go on. All in all, I'm happy with this repair work and how it went. It was slow, there was no doubt about that. That explains the delay on this episode, guys, so I apologise for that. But I just wanted to make sure that everything was done as best as I could do it. And that's why I took it even slower, because it's something new to me. Some of these jobs needed intricate work, so it needed practice. So it ended up being a bigger repair than it initially was going to be, what I thought it was going to be. But I guess that's, part and parcel with owning an old wooden boat. So check out the last episode. You'll see a link here on the top right of the screen. And yeah, if you haven't seen it, go ahead and check it out. That was repairing the old frame, or the other frame closer to the stern. And that was more straightforward. We actually used just regular deal for this, and I think it was sufficient. But have a look and see what you think. I also have a PayPal link in the description below if you feel like further supporting my project there. I can't thank you guys enough for all the support over the years. It's really fantastic. Soon we'll start fiberglassing the forecabin ceiling, or the roof, and decks as well. There's a few more jobs that need to be done structurally on the interior, so that's what we'll be doing in the next episode or two before we get to the fiberglassing. But there's exciting work ahead, and I'm excited to document it for you guys to see as well. Do let me know what projects you're working on, wooden boats, whatever it may be. I'd be interested to hear about it. I'm always excited to read the comments and hear what projects and what work you guys have been up to. As always, guys, stay productive and have fun creating. I will see you all in the next episode.